Hey, what's up, guys? This is Benny Ricciardi with rotocurve.com, and I'm here with our DraftKings NBA plays for Wednesday, February 24th. What we're going to talk about here are four guys who we're looking at that are going to be on a lot of our rosters. So let's call up the slideshow and get into each one and why we like them today. The first guy we're going to be talking about is Drummond at $8,000. He's in a high total game against Philadelphia with a 211 total expected. Philly has been one of the best matchups so far this season for centers. The guy that they roll out at center in Jahlil Okafor is undersized. He's more of a power forward, so he gets a lot of his shots blocked and gives up a lot of rebounds when he does match up against a true center. And Drummond is one of the true low-post centers we do have in this league. In 2 games so far against Philly this season, he's had 54 and 51 fantasy points, and his price is down from a high of $9,900 to only $8,000. At $8,000, 51 and 54 fantasy points would be over 6x value. So he's already shown us that he can put up big numbers against this team. And with the price break that we're getting today, I think he's actually one of my favorite options for the center position and one of my favorite options to spend up on. Next guy we're going to talk about is one of my favorite value plays in the day, and that's Matt Barnes at only $5,000. He's got a dream matchup here versus the LA Lakers. Kobe plays no defense anymore, and the Lakers give up a ton of fantasy points to every position on the floor, especially to the wing players. Barnes has seen 32 minutes per game since the All-Star break. Remember, they traded away Jeff Green. They got Marc Gasol hurt. They got rid of Courtney Lee. So there's a lot of minutes that have opened up for, a few of the players that they had in the front court, namely guys like Matt Barnes. Memphis is low on scoring options and wing players, as we just said, because of all the trades and even because of, the injury to Gasol. Means there's a lot of shots, a lot of usage, a lot of points that open up for everybody else on the roster. In 17 games this season where Matt Barnes has played 30-plus minutes, he's only failed to reach 5x value 3 times in those 17 games. So 14 of the 17 games where he's seen 30-plus minutes, he's been able to get you at least 25 or more fantasy points. He's a very solid cash game play here and such a good matchup against the Lakers. And at $5,000, I think he's one of the cheaper salary saver kind of options that I'm going to be rolling out in a lot of my lineups. The next guy we're going to talk about is Hassan Whiteside. He's in a paced-up game against the Golden State Warriors with a 214 total, which is really high for a Miami game. We see a lot of Miami totals under 200. So 214 is a number that kind of stands out when they're involved. Bogut just allowed 60 fantasy points in the last game to Al Horford, so centers have been doing pretty well against the Golden State Warriors. Remember, the Warriors do play that paced-up style. There's a lot of more missed shots, a lot more possessions, and the way Whiteside's been cleaning the boards, I think that's something good. He's also been scoring a lot since Bosh has been out. He's basically the only good big man that the Heat have left. After him, you're basically down to guys like, Josh McRoberts, Amari Stoudemire, Udonis Haslem. So you're going to see a lot of minutes here for Whiteside. In his last 2 games, he's had 25 points, 23 rebounds, and 2 blocks in the one game. And then he followed that up with 19 points, 18 rebounds, and 6 blocks in the next game. So he's been giving you about 50-plus fantasy points when he rolls out there, sometimes even more with some upside there. At $7,600, I think the price is getting up towards that point where, he's a good value for cash games, but I still think he has some GPP upside as well. I'm looking for another, close to 20-20 game out of him with a couple block shots. And if he can pull that off for us, I think he's going to get us around 45 to 55 fantasy points, which at $7,600 would be an excellent return of 6x or better. The last guy we're going to talk about is Tobias Harris. He's in that same game against Philly as Drummond with the 210, 211 total. Philly plays bad defense all around, so it really doesn't matter what position you want to target to match up against them. Guys have been putting up big numbers against this bad 76ers team all year. Harris finally has consistent minutes after the trade. Since being traded over for Orlando, he's now found a nice spot in that Detroit rotation, and it looks like he's going to be averaging 30 to 35 minutes a game. Right now, he's averaging 33 minutes since becoming a Piston with 17 points, 4 rebounds, 2 assists, and 2 defensive stats per game, which has given him a little bit over 30 fantasy points. He's had back-to-back games of 30 or more fantasy points, and his price is still pretty cheap at only $6K. I think he has a very safe 30.4, and because the matchup is so good in this one, I think he has upside into the 40s. If he gets you a return of 36 or better, that's giving you 6x on your money. And even on the downside, I don't think he gets less than like 28 to 32 fantasy points, which would still be a minimum of 5x and, pretty safe return, pretty safe play for you here today. I do think there's a lot of upside with Harris, but I also think that the safety is good enough that I don't mind rolling him out in either cash games or in GPPs today. So those are some of the guys that I'm looking at. Like I said, I think it's as most days are for me, I think it's going to be a 2-center day on DraftKings. We talked about it a little bit yesterday. If you went with guys like Vucevic and Brook Lopez, you probably had a good night. The day before, we talked about guys like Towns and Al Horford. If you put those two guys in there, you're getting 110, 120 points out of the position. So I do think it's a good idea to double up on the center spot, put a center in the center spot, put a second center in the utility spot. And I think I'm going to be doing it again here today, even paying up a little bit for him for guys like Drummond and Whiteside. I think those two guys together, if they have pretty decent games, have maybe a 90 to 120 point range that I'm looking at to get out of the two of them added together, which I'd be perfectly happy to spend $15K for the two of them if that was going to be the return that I got. So thank you guys for joining us here at rotocurve.com. Be sure to look for our NBA Fades video, which will be coming up in a little bit as well, telling you some of the players who we do not like and are not going to be using in our GPPs today. So thank you for joining us here at rotocurve.com. And as always, stay classy, DFS.